just from a method standpoint,
Hmm.
just that it's so much more efficient and it's also more effective to adopt this community-led version of data collection. When you think about what a regular focus group is, a traditional approach to focus groups, we have a stranger lead a conversation among people. Before that, they try to generate a relationship out of thin air so that people will open up. Before we have this recorded conversation, we slide what looks like a contract, the consent form, and then we tell everybody, relax and be as honest as you possibly can and expect this high quality data, right? And that just feels like such an unreasonable expectation to me versus having a conversation. We didn't call it a focus group. We referred to it as a group discussion. This discussion is led by a fellow resident they already know. We had food, so it was like chatting over dinner with each other. Of course, they did provide consent, but it was oral consent. We had an infographic version of a consent form. Now, they could have the contract looking one if they wanted, but they got a plain language and visual summary of what those paragraphs of text meant, right? So we wanted everybody to feel informed, but also not to make it strangely formal with signing a contract before a recorded conversation with a stranger, right? So all of that, just those adjustments were very helpful, and we really did see the differences. So Linda did a wonderful job leading the group discussions with our resident advisory group, but the tone was just different. The need to clarify certain things when you are not in that context, it's just different. I'll use one example from one of the focus groups. There was a point at which I think somebody referenced a park or something like that. And it was out of the scope of the conversation, but it was important to that person at that moment. And so Katoya immediately clocked it. She knew what the park was, or whatever the location that was being described. There had been some trouble there, and she immediately said like, oh yes, I know that, I've heard of that, and then referred to like, but that's the city's responsibility, not Grove Park renewal. That could have taken 10 or 15 minutes with, well, what I think I'm hearing you say is, where is this park located, right? All the things that an outsider would have to do in order to get the context. So what we're talking about when we have a community member lead instead of that qualitative data collection in particular, but having a community member, there's just that contextual expertise that we don't have. So what we're saying is when we have, it's easier for us when we're thinking about technical expertise and then contextual expertise. It's easier for me as a researcher to teach you what to do than it is for you to teach me to be you, right? So facilitating a conversation, okay, sure, we can do that. Those are just like, I mean, it's not light work. Like it's a skill that you have to develop, but that's training like we would do with any entry level. Anyone can learn how to do that. Researchers, other professionals did not come out of the womb conducting focus groups, right? Everybody learned at some point. But you did, when you came out of the womb, start accumulating your lived experiences. So to ask you to download all of that in me so that I can probe properly and have a nuanced understanding is ridiculous compared to me teaching you some skills to facilitate a conversation, to get the kinds of information, to generate the kind of information that we want. So more efficient, that's going to be more efficient in the training, and it's also going to be more rigorous when we talk about precision or accuracy of results versus this obsession sometimes for people with traditional notions of methodological rigor that end up just being inflexible or unyielding. And so the irony is that your methodological rigor can interfere with the rigor, the precision or accuracy of your results, which that's the point. That's why we're doing any of this to begin with. We want high quality data. So being able to take a step back and not hoard power or not be or control whatever it is, and it's different things for different people, but being able to just recognize at any point in the process, and I mean all throughout the research process, what's more important here, contextual expertise or technical expertise, and then having whoever's the most appropriate party take the lead. I would never ask a community member like, hey, come do this structural equation modeling. we need you to do hierarchical linear modeling. Like, no, we wouldn't do, that's ridiculous, right? So it's not an overcorrection, but like recognizing when, as the professional, it is best for everybody for you to take a step back because you're just not the best suited for this particular thing. So that was, we think this approach has promise in particular because it's just more efficient and ultimately going to be more effective, and it's not radical in the implementation. It really does, for some people, require more of a radical shift in thinking, in perspective, in opening up the pool of people who are qualified to do this thing in your. So it's really just a mind thing. If you can get over that, get over yourself potentially. Doesn't make you less important if a community member leads your data collection. Your value shouldn't be rooted in your work. You just are inherently valuable. So there's no threat, for someone else stepping up in that way. But if you can lean into that collaboration instead of like the strange power dynamic that exists in lots of like researcher or evaluator or professional and community member, like to just let the most qualified person do the job. And in many instances, it is the community member. I'll say this one last thing, because we recently presented, Katoya and I presented at a conference in Pittsburgh, and one of the questions kind of confused me a little bit, and then it dawned on me afterward, and I was like, oh, that makes sense. So, I get up and I say these things, and then we introduce Katoya speaks, and some people were confused about why she was the better person to do this, to lead the focus groups, like, and no one said the quiet part out loud, but it was like, aren't you both Black women? Like, what? Like, what is why are you wildly unqualified to do this while she is? And therein lies the problem, right? In Absolutely. Intervention research, we talk about surface structure and deep structure, right? So surface structure are all of those like superficial kinds of things. So I could take a pamphlet designed for one group and just change the images and maybe the name, right? The names of the people mentioned. That's surface structure. That's very superficial things. If I don't change like the points of reference in there, I don't change things that really speak to the culture, right? Norms, language, again, points of reference, things like that, then the people are going to recognize it as like, this still doesn't work. Like, this is not for me. This is not designed for me. So in the same way, yes, like demographically I match, right? But I don't live there. They know who the neighbors are because they all live together. So even being very similar demographically, I or Linda still would not have been the best fit because we don't have the context. And so I think it's important for people to like recognize like that deep structure, that deep dive, and stop just thinking in demographic terms like, oh, you'll be fine, insert me here because I superficially fit in with everybody else. So I'll stop there.
I know she does want to stop. I love to hear Erin get on her soapbox about this. It bleeds with passion. And I just want to say that, as you know, I hadn't met Linda yet, but I knew Erin, and to just feel fully supported and to feel so affirmed that like I was the one. I mean, I don't know a time I felt more chosen, and so but I took it, humbly and gracefully. And I mean, I started to kind of like try to believe it myself. But I will say from the beginning, I was like, sure, but then as I sat there and connected with everyone, it made sense to me too. And so it was just nice to be someone knowing, yeah, sure, I have contacts and I have the relationship, but to truly feel the most to feel that that was most valuable for the results needed and to feel supported by Erin and Linda throughout the process, and to give the guidelines, the structure, all of the things that help make it, work. It made the biggest difference. So I just want to commend them for pursuing this direction to get the results in the most authentic way.
Beautifully said. I think our audience by now felt and got hit by your spiritual passion on the floor. as I am. 2 points to really summarize. One is, yeah, so like the merit-based, and by merit, I mean academically, merit-based, like if a focus group goes well, we say, oh, we have a very skilled facilitator that we brought in from outside. So it's attributed to that, learned whatever skills. And also like consent you mentioned, which is interesting because often the consent is not there to protect the folks in the room, but it's really the organization, the person who brought this in, right? So the idea of assuming to begin with that community has the expertise, they are the expert as opposed to we have something to teach, is like it sounds so natural and common sense, but commonsensical, but that is not what we see. Point, I'm just summarizing and saying in different words from what you've already said. Number two, I do agree with you, Katoya. Like, I will say Aaron and Linda and Maureen have come in and just like ripped it apart at IRL, and I remember that day very clearly when Aaron said, why do we say community based is not important? It has to be community led. What you just heard from what Aaron just said. And that took Aaron's an academic researcher, Aaron, Linda, we took those particular type of academic researchers to acknowledge somebody like Katoya, somebody like, people in your community. So I think it's actually both. You are a dream team, and we just hope that IRL inspires more of academic scholars like Aaron and Linda to do this kind of work. Thank you.
And I just want to kind of tie that into Maureen saying places where people don't really need me. And I think that this concept is it. Like community is there. And I think that if people want to find the gems that can do this type of facilitating and be a voice and find value in the community, that it's worth it to not come in and have the complex to save or do, or but to go within and empower the community, even from choosing me to facilitate, but then also having the resident advisory team. You're giving the voice and the power back to the community to be the change makers while you utilize your experience, network, and everything else to make the change. And so, again, I'm just echoing it all back. But as a community person, it shows the value right back to the community, and you get to empower and embolden people who already are there to feel most welcomed and a part of the mission.
And you started it, Katoya, so now I'm gonna be that person too. Last thing. So I feel like the goal for anybody, like any scientist, anybody who is producing knowledge, anybody who's interested truly in like answering the questions, our goal really should be capacity building, right? There are so many things to discover all over the place, right? And so if we can help people learn how to do things like collect their own data, ultimately analyze their own data. If they can answer their own questions, we can move on to the next community who doesn't have those skills. So like just approaching it as like building capacity along the way, it's not like you're not going to have a job anymore. If you allow people to maximize or optimize their skills, then suddenly there won't be enough research to go around for all of us, right? That kind of like zero sum mentality just drags out the process for us getting to these places of discovery and being able to improve health, which if that's our goal, then we want to do it as quickly and as efficiently as possible. And ultimately, I would love to see like a community trained up fully in research. We actually had, or evaluation, we had a position that we weren't able to fill, but we were going to have an apprenticeship, right? For somebody from start to finish to learn what we were doing so that they could do it after we're gone, right? So that kind of like train the trainer model or each one teach one, all of that will exponentially increase our reach. So I think thinking long term and not just like we don't have time in our lifetime as researchers or in our lifetimes as researchers to be able to get to all of the things, but we could if we would help move the process along by getting out of the way, get out of people's way. help equip them, come alongside them. I can always come and write a grant if you don't have time to do that. Like, I will try to help you pursue this money together, but then I can leave and you can go on and you can actually do the work and be trusted to do so. So I'll stop there.